Welcome to A Simple Life. Why quitting is an option? Let's talk about it. I've had opportunities come up in my life, and as they come before me, you have this angst, fear that if you change what you're doing, you're going to fail. And so, as I've grown older, I've realized that more and more those opportunities that come up are kind of once in a lifetime. And people say that all the time. Oh, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. No, but in many cases, the window of opportunity to do something will really, truly only happen once in your life. And that has led me to the place of quitting. Now, what am I quitting? How am I quitting? What does this mean for us? I'm not going anywhere. This isn't clickbait. I'm not quitting YouTube. I will keep putting videos out and sharing our story because there are amazing things that are starting to unfold in our lives. And one of them has to do possibly with that video I made almost a year ago about adoption. But that's not this video. And I'm not quitting being a father, so don't worry about that. Right now, I'm just watering our figs, and as you can see, they're doing lovely. They're growing really good in here. I do have to water them more frequently than if they were in the ground. Matter of fact, a lot more frequently because they only have, a quarter of a square foot of soil. But look what I just found. Look at that, a little frog. I love it. I mean, this is in my garden. I have a frog in my garden. I'm excited about having a frog in my garden, mostly because it means he's going to eat all kinds of little bugs that potentially may be doing more harm than good. Now, while we talk, I'm going to prep a bed down here, and let me show you how I prep my beds once I've torn everything out. All right, so whenever you set these beds, generally it's after things have either bolted or we've harvested all of it. And this is about 50-50. We had a bunch of lettuces bolt because we had that really, really hot spell. We lost some romaine, some iceberg, some butter lettuce. About 50% of it we consumed and the other 50% bolted. So I might have overdone it this year with the irrigation, but once again, like I explained when I was setting it up, this was a test bed. I wanted to see how it was going to work, if this setup was necessary. And I'm finding it is necessary, but not quite the way I had it set up was it necessary. So I'll figure it out over the next couple of years. All right, so a lot is changing around here. When I say a lot, I mean a lot. We have done a lot of work. We're getting ready to finish the pond that's down there. We have the liner actually spread out. I'm just waiting for a piece of machinery to come so I can weld the liner together once we get it in there. That's one aspect of what's changing around here. The other aspect that's changing around here is, well, we're obviously transitioning from just growing a garden and homesteading to slowly building up an actual working business, a business that potentially will be, well, my income. And that gets to the other changes around here, because there's a few other changes around here that are happening. And you may be able to hear it in the background. There's some machinery up here. Oh, hi. This is not changing. Hi, how are you? And part of that change that's going to happen is we are doing some logging up here. And the logging is actually happening behind you. Most of the view that you guys see on a daily basis when I'm up here is not going to change that drastically. You may notice the trees along the road are a little thinner because we're leaving a lot of those. And there's reason for doing that. Part of it is I really like the shade that they provide in the evening up here as we are working in the gardens. And so I don't want that to change. Now, I still haven't gotten to quitting. Now, once again, I'm not quitting YouTube. We'll get to that. We'll get to the quitting bit. Now, why am I going to log? And I'm going to share the process of logging and what the process looked like for me, who I hired, why I hired them, how I feel about it. Because to be honest, I've had really mixed feelings about logging. Those trees on average are probably 80 years old. I wasn't alive 80 years ago. So it feels kind of weird to be harvesting a crop that I wasn't even alive when it was planted. Personally, I don't have a problem logging because I'm going to replant. We're going to do some great stuff down there. I don't have a problem with that. It's just the fact that, well, once you log it, you can't undo it. And what is the value of that forest to me? I don't know. Like, not a money value. I don't know what the value of it is to me as a person, to my family, to my boys. And once it's gone, I'll know the value, but you can't undo it. And that's kind of my struggle with logging. It has nothing to do with anything other than the fact that we really enjoy the forest. Now, we enjoy the forest, so why would I log it? Well, that has to do with the fact that it is beyond ripe. It's actually way beyond ripe. You know, 50-year-old stand is going to be pretty easy to sell. You know, 60-year-old stand, yeah, pretty easy to sell. An 80-year-old stand where I have Doug fir in there that are 3 feet thick, 4 feet thick, 5 feet thick at the bottom, that is going to be a whole nother thing. Matter of fact, we already looked at one tree. It's got to be 5 foot round, and we're not going to take it because there's not a mill that will take it or can handle it, which is fine. I'm not worried about that. I want to leave some of those old trees that, you know, potentially will help replant the forest itself because it's more of a seed producing tree. It's going to produce tons and tons and tons of seeds. All right, so this is kind of how I prep my beds. I do this about a day or so, maybe 2 days before I'm getting ready. And the idea is that I smooth out the bed. I kind of just rough up the top layer of soil, break it up a little. Now, I'm not tilling. I'm not doing any of that. This is very much a low till, no till type of system. And then I'm taking this chunky stuff and I'm kind of just putting the chunky stuff at the end of this bed. And that gives me a nice, beautiful, even bed to plant into. It also gives me a nice surface to water. Now, why, before I put anything in here, do I want to start watering? Well, the reason I want to start watering before I put anything in here is because the plants that were in here were fairly mature. And so while they were mature, it wasn't a problem that I wasn't top watering. So most of the moisture was 2 to 3 inches deep. Well, plants I'm going to be putting in here are going to be much more immature than that. I've talked many times about the fact that my compost, because it's a little on the chunky side, it's a little hydrophobic. And so the moisture on the top surface is going to evaporate a lot quicker. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend about 2, maybe 3 days coming in here once a day and giving this a really good soaking. Not flooding it, just getting it a good soaking. Let me show you what that looks like. Remember, these beds are actually 30-inch beds. The pathways have kind of widened out a little because of the way I planted. Well, I could have planted a little wider. And in the future, this whole greenhouse will be done slightly differently. But let me show you how I do it. I usually take my fogger nozzle off, and I have a little, you know, on and off valve here, and I just turn this so it's about like that. And then I spend a few minutes, and I just kind of water this in nice and patiently. I could use a soaker, like a big soaker nozzle to do this. Get out any weeds that are still around. The one thing I have to say about my beds this year is we have very, very, very few weeds. Compared to last year, by this time we were like struggling to keep up with them. We are talking, we maybe have spent an hour, maybe 2 hours all summer weeding, which is, I mean, that's cumulative. You know, it's not a month, it's not a week. It's like, that's probably cumulative. I'm just gonna go water this for a bit. The real reason for logging was the harvest was ready. And the longer I waited, I was noticing we were having trees that were dying. We were having trees falling down. And, every tree that dies, every tree that falls down, that's money that I can't recoup. I mean, it's firewood, sure, but that's not what you want to do if you have a crop of things that will have value to you. As I started realizing that the time was now, I started also looking at what that was going to do and what we were going to do with the finances. All right, so we're done watering that. Let me show you 2 beds over here, and then we'll talk about finances. So this irrigation has been flipped this way so we could prep that bed down there. This bed's already been prepped, and I've been watering it for about 3 or 4 days. This evening, we'll actually be putting stuff in both of these beds. The stuff that we'll be putting in there is a whole lot of broccoli. I have 3 types of broccoli. I have a 25-day broccoli, 29-day broccoli, and a 60-day broccoli, but they're all broccoli that are very heat tolerant, which should do really good for us. Well, as you can see, I have tomato plants that are 6 feet tall now, and I have tomato plants that aren't quite. Now, the plants that aren't quite 6 feet tall are still doing really good. They are also an heirloom variety, which is different than the other ones. Our beefsteaks are doing really good. We're getting some good growth on them. They are looking all kinds of different shapes, and they're growing nicely. This plant I've actually split, and we have 2 kind of plants going. We have this one and this one, and I split them by letting one of the what we call armpit sprouts. Hello, cat. So the way that we split the tomato plants and we end up with kind of 2 plants or 2 main trunks, that works for me, is I let what we like to call, what I've been referring to as an armpit sprout. We let that grow, and as that grows, it actually turns into a whole separate plant. All right, let me get my pruners. Here they are right here. They're usually hanging up somewhere, and I'll show you how we've been pruning these, because it's really easy. What I do is I come in and I look for the armpit growths, like this one right here, and I just kind of cut that off. Especially when they're fresh and young, they're really easy to do this too. There you go. And I'll keep looking. Got a little one down here. Cut that one off. And I think that's about it on that plant. And we'll keep going. Got a little one starting right there. Just nip that. Come right here. And I'm going to nip that. Oh, here you go. See, if I let this go, this would be another start. And this would actually create its own basically a whole nother plant. And I say a whole nother plant because it will create another lead that will also produce more leads and more main groups of leaves as well as fruit. And I don't want that. I want these to be as unified and organized as possible. So as we go through the season, I know where my fruit is, and I can also prune so my fruit is getting the most sun as well as good airflow, so I don't end up with disease and stuff setting in. Let me show you what that looks like, because I have some great little clusters right here that are starting to ripen. So here's a cluster right here. It's starting to ripen, and you can see these leaves are going to block the sun, so we're going to take them off. I got one right here too. We'll take this one off too. Just get this nice and exposed. We'll get air going by it. We'll also get sun hitting these. Got a nice little cluster right here. Not quite as big as that one, but it's off to the side, and it's got plenty of airflow around it. You come over here to our Sweet Millions, which is what this variety is. You can see this cluster is just ginormous. And so we're going to open up around it just a little bit more so we get some good airflow and sun hitting these so they can ripen up. And you can see the ones that were getting sun are starting to ripen right there. And there's another cluster up here. And this cluster on the next plant is actually doing really good. We got some leaves right here, so we're going to take these off, open that up, and now this whole bit, I mean, this is a huge cluster. There may be, 60 cherries on there. And if you see, here is one of those armpit growths that we let go, and it's grown up to the side, and I've already put a string on it. As we go through, we're just going to look at these tomato plants, and as they grow a little farther, we're just going to take this and we're just going to wrap this like that, and that's going to support this as it continues to climb. Yeah, I couldn't be happier. I mean, they're going crazy. I'm going to do cherry tomatoes in the future, a lot of them, like rows of them. That's what this greenhouse is going to be in the future, is tomatoes. And I'm probably going to do a lot of cherry tomatoes because I'm seeing that everything's working. Now, it could be the variety,
It could be just what's going on, but this looks like a winner to me. And that's what I'm looking for. That's why I'm doing all the different things I'm doing. Now, when it comes to the beefsteak, that's something I'll be looking at in the future as well, because, well, if I get good crops off my beefsteaks, I'll probably do them again. Why am I picking and choosing based off of what I'm getting good results with? Well, it's the easiest way to get a win when I need it, and I'm gonna need a win for what I have planned. I'm gonna need lots of little wins. And those little wins that I'm gonna get here and there, they're gonna make the difference between success and failure. Money. One of the most awkward subjects to talk about. What are we gonna do with the finances that we receive from logging? Here's what's gonna happen with it. We're gonna do some infrastructure projects around here, cover the cost of getting a few small pieces of equipment to help me do gardening and stuff like that. When I say small pieces of equipment, like a two-wheeled tractor, very small manure spreader, so we can spread manure in our greenhouses and across our beds much easier than the way we were doing it. Small enough to be pulled by like a quad or a side-by-side, so fairly small. We are going to build the starter greenhouse that's right behind here that we're planning on putting back there. There's not a lot that's going to go into that, but there's going to be like a foundation poured. We're going to do a few other things like that. Nothing crazy. A lot of just basic infrastructure things to help us continue to get this going. Now, what is this? Well, here's where it comes down to quitting. This is a farm. And if you're going to own a farm, you probably should farm. And that's the plan. I currently work a 9 to 5. And that soaks up 8 hours, 9, 10 hours of my day, every day. And so when I'm done with my job, I come up here and I garden and I work and I run equipment and we prune and we trim and we do all the stuff that you see us do. I do that after I've put in a big chunk of change of time into my regular job. I do it on the weekends. I work really hard. I work a lot. And I want to be able to focus on what we're doing here. Now, I'm not quitting my job tomorrow. I'm not quitting it next week. But I am going to quit in the next couple years. And you're going, well, the next couple years, that's a long way off. Well, you're right. It is. But if I want this to be successful, and I really want this to actually happen, and I want to be able to support my family, I need to make sure that I have tested and I know my methodologies and I know how I'm growing and I know what I'm growing and I know where I'm growing it. That's very important. That's, to be honest, the best that I can do to secure the fact that my family is going to continue to be able to succeed. And I'm not going to leave my family in a hard spot because I have a dream of farming. After we're done with the little infrastructure stuff that we're doing around here, what are we going to do with the money left over? Well, that's a really good question. That's going to go into a rainy day fund. It will not be touched for any reason other than once we are full-time farming, we need to pay bills and we need to keep ourselves afloat. And I think it's going to take maybe 2 to 3 years to completely be able to cover my current salary. Right now, I can cover about 40% of my salary off the farm. And that's not including any produce. I believe that with produce, with my ends, with some restaurants, doing a CSA, farmer stand, that kind of stuff, some buyers clubs, I believe I can easily cover my salary between the proteins that we raise and the vegetables I produce. I have about an acre, and I don't see why I can't garden an acre and make a good living doing that. And that's the plan. That is why I'm quitting. And what I'm quitting, well, I'm going to quit my 9 to 5. Now, once again, not today, not tomorrow, in the future. That is just one thing that is going on in our lives. I'll keep you updated as some really exciting news may be coming with our family growing, all the amazing things that are going on in our lives. But for right now, let me show you what some of the logging and stuff looks like. what's going on, where the areas are. Right down in there is the flattest portion of this whole entire property. It's 5 acres of completely solid flat land, and when it's logged, we're gonna clear it, and I'm gonna plant that into grasses and stuff. We'll run some cattle up there until we are ready to do gardens and some vegetables down there.
I am down here now in we've been calling this the hole. And if you remember, there's a video I shot right down there. And that video I shot was the video where I talked about my dad passing away. Matter of fact, today is his birthday. So happy birthday, Dad. All right, well, yeah, it's insane. Like, not only is this stuff huge, it's so different when there's nothing here. Yes, totally different view. It'll be interesting. I'm processing a lot. I'll put it that way. I'm not sorry, just processing, trying to get my head wrapped around everything. That's a good way to put it. I'm not quitting YouTube. I'm too stubborn for that. I'm not quitting this life that we have built. We are going to make some adjustments over the next, call it 1.5 to 2 years. And that's going to change, hopefully, everything for the better. Not that I'm unhappy where I'm at, but I have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And I want to share that journey with you. So, have a good one.